Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is off. Let's get right to the latest on the Israel-Hamas war. We have team coverage from the Middle East to Washington. We're going to begin with NBC's Jay Gray, who joins us from Tel Aviv. So, Jay, overnight, Israeli warplanes pounded southern Gaza, including Rafah. That's where the border crossing with Egypt is. These are areas the Israeli military actually told Palestinians to evacuate to. So what is the latest on the fighting this morning? Is anywhere in Gaza safe right now?
Well, Joe, I think the simple answer to that is no. There's a lot of problems and a lot of violence right now as you talk about Israeli Defense Forces through aerial strikes really attacked the region last night into the early morning. And what they continue to say is that they are going to root out Hamas regardless of where they may be, and that they are going to find Hamas and rid Gaza of Hamas when pressed on the issue of innocent civilians, especially as you speak about piling up thousands at the border, the Rafah border. What they say is that it is Hamas that put these civilians in harm's way, and their job to keep them out of harm's way, several times suggesting that Hamas is using those that are in the area as shields and to hide some of their weapons and other things that are going on there. And so they say that they're going to continue the attack until they are told otherwise from diplomats, and that they are going to intensify that attack eventually, Joe, as we've been talking about for days, perhaps moving in on the ground.
Jay, we know UN agencies and rights groups are highlighting the humanitarian disaster that is unfolding in Gaza. We've seen aid trucks waiting at that Rafah crossing. They're still not being allowed in. So what's going on with that part of this story? Has any progress been made there?
Yeah, waiting for days. You're absolutely right. Much needed food, water, medicine, fuel. And it's really finger pointing that's been going on. The Egyptians saying that they're ready. The Israelis at times saying they are ready. Neither side really making this happen. And then you've got Hamas in that mix as well. Let's listen to what the UNRWA is saying about the desperate need there.
What we are calling for at UNRWA is for the siege to be lifted, the siege on the Gaza Strip to be lifted. No supplies have come into Gaza since the 7th of October. Nothing. No fuel, no food, no water, no other types of assistance. We're talking about 2 million people in the Gaza Strip who do not have water, and water is running out, and water is life, and life is running out of Gaza.
Yeah, look, 2 days ago, we were told there was going to be a ceasefire. Obviously, that never happened. The negotiations are continuing on the diplomatic side with Secretary Blinken. I think it's important to point out, though, Joe, as the president makes his trip here tomorrow, he says that a stated mission is not only to show his support and the American support for Israel, but to have humanitarian aid move into those who are in desperate need. That's going to be a tough sell on both sides, but something, again, that the White House has said he is carrying that message as he comes to Israel.
Jay, I also want to ask you about the hostages. This week, the Israeli military is saying it believes there are 199 hostages being held by Hamas. Now, Hamas has actually released its first video of one of the captives, a French-Israeli woman. What are we learning about this?
21-year-old whose parents say that she is resilient, that they obviously were thrilled to see that she was alive, did not know whether she was alive or not, and say that they believe that resilience that she has will lead to her eventually reuniting with her family. Very difficult time for so many families who are either unaware or do know that their family members are being held hostage. There's been a lot of pressure from within Israel, from certain groups, to have the army go in and enact some rescues. What we've been told, and this is the same from the U.S. side, where there's pressure and a number of U.S. citizens who may be being held hostage. Frankly, they don't know where they all are. They are in underground tunnels. They are being hidden in certain other areas. And so that's just the basic bottom line as to why there's been so little movement right now. The suggestion is there may be some type of trade in the works, though there's been nothing said publicly or diplomatically about that, Joe. And right now, that frustration, along with everything else that's going on in the region, obviously building, and especially with those desperate families. You feel for those families who are struggling with that.
We certainly do. All right, Jay Gray reporting from Israel. Jay, thank you so much. Let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba for more on President Biden's upcoming trip to Israel. Monica, good morning. So we just got this announcement. It's happening quickly, announced yesterday by Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who has been in the Middle East himself for several days now. We know earlier this year the president went to Ukraine when that war with Russia hit the one-year mark. So what can we expect from the president's trip this week? Who will he be meeting with?
This will be a very significant trip, Joe. The president will be leaving for Israel later tonight at some point. He will land in Tel Aviv, the White House tells us, to have meetings there. And then he will, of course, be discussing the situation on the ground as it relates to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, while stressing, of course, the United States' solidarity with Israel. This will really be a show of support. And the White House was clear that this was something that the president wanted to do himself once they determined it was feasible. And from there, he will head to Amman in Jordan, where he will be meeting with some key leaders to continue this conversation. He'll meet with Egypt's President al-Sisi. He'll meet with King Abdullah there in Jordan, as well as the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, to continue again to push for this directive to really protect civilians to the degree that that is possible. And then he'll be returning to Washington. Joe.
Monica, what's some of the reaction from Israel ahead of the president's trip?
Well, we are hearing this as something that they are welcoming. Of course, it was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu who extended this invitation to the president. They were considering it over the weekend. And now we're also hearing a little bit more from a spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces on what this visit will mean. Listen.
I think that hopefully it will send a resounding message to the region and any Iranian terrorist organization around us to keep at bay and not escalate the situation in the Middle East further. I think that's the most important message that the president will bring, other than it's the tremendous support of the United States to Israel and our right to defend ourselves.
That message is a huge priority for the administration, to continue to signal that any other country or actor who is thinking about getting involved in this conflict shouldn't. And the president and anybody from his top aides on down has given a very specific message to Iran in particular, which is be careful and simply do not.
I mean, Monica, let's be clear. The president's heading into an active war zone. What are the challenges that come with that?
It would be complicated for the president to go anywhere. We know that from domestic travel, other international summits, overseas visits. This is a next level kind of complication. But we do know that they deemed it was safe enough to actually announce it in advance, which does tell you that security parameters are in place for this to be a visit that, of course, has a lot of moving pieces, a lot of security and logistical considerations, but that they felt it was possible to do. And that the reason that they're going right now is also possibly because there may be a window before this ground invasion begins, though, of course, it is still a very active combat zone, and that reality is not lost on the White House or the president. Joe.
All right, Monica, thank you so much. So the hostages taken by Hamas are still at the center of this war 10 days after the Hamas attack. We want to talk with NBC News terrorism contributor analyst Jim Kavanagh about the challenges surrounding this hostage situation, how it's complicating Israel's response. So, Jim, first let's talk about Hamas releasing this first hostage video. It's unclear when it was taken, but we know she's 21 years old. Her name is Mia Shem, and in the video she says she's being given medical care. She has to be reunited with her family as soon as possible. It's unclear if she's being forced to make any statements. Given your background as a former hostage negotiator, what might be the reason Hamas is just now releasing this video?
Because, Joe, to Hamas, these hostages are extremely valuable. If you're a family of one of the hostages, this is a thread you should be able to hold on to in this dire situation. They went into Israel and they had the plan to take hostages. Hostages are extremely valuable to Hamas. In fact, the leader of Hamas in Gaza was an Israeli prisoner who was released in a hostage exchange for one Israeli soldier and 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. So in Hamas's eyes, life is not worth much, but these hostages are valuable, and that's important for the negotiators and everyone to understand going forward.
So, Jim, this is a complex situation, to put it mildly. Israeli officials say Hamas hasn't said what it wants, how to begin negotiations, how many hostages it has taken. Hamas even threatened last week to start executing the hostages if Israel bombs homes in Gaza. So NBC's Lester Holt spoke to Gershon Baskin last night. He negotiated with Hamas to secure the high-profile release of an Israeli soldier back in 2011. Let's listen to what he said about the best way he thinks to open dialogue with Hamas.
The best approach is understanding that it can't be directly done by Israel. To start a dialogue with Hamas, we have to understand who can do it. And the ones who can do it are the countries that have influence over Hamas, which are Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt, and Iran.
So, Jim, in your mind, what should Israel's approach to this hostage situation look like?
Exactly, Joe. Well, he's right about that. This is a case for a third-party negotiator, certainly not directly with Israelis. But Qatar is in a great position, as the negotiator mentioned, to be the third-party intermediary, because the leader of Hamas is in Qatar. He's actually in Qatar. So you have to understand when you're negotiating on anything, even this multi-layered hostage crisis here, it's not about what you want. You want the hostages, of course, but it's about what the other guy wants. And we can see a glimmer of that in what Hamas has done and said in the last weeks. We know them intrinsically over the last 40, 50 years. We know what they are, a violent terrorist organization. But watch what they say. Their leader said right away to all the nations of the world, and especially Arab nations, you shouldn't trust Israel to give you protection. They can't protect you. And he referenced the broad attack on the south of Israel by Hamas. So this is the leader trying to be a nation. He's a terrorist group, but he wants to be an equal to other world nations, to give statements like a world leader would give a leader of a nation. Secondly, the statements of yesterday that Richard reported on, which is we may release foreign hostages unconditionally. Again, another statement. They want to be big. They want to be on the international stage. They want to be seen as a nation who would, have largesse, who would give foreign hostages a break, release them. This is important in understanding what Hamas wants. They want to save face. They want to be important. They want to be equal on the stage with others. So you have to understand that. And you use a third-party intermediary, like the negotiator said, probably Qatar. You want to get as close to that leader as you can. In Gaza, it's very dicey. I mean, communications can be cut when you're negotiating with where the hostages are, even if you're making deals with the leader in Qatar. People can be killed. Negotiators can be killed. It's very, very dicey.
And one other interesting development, Hamas says it's considering the release of non-Israeli hostages, something we'll be keeping an eye on. Jim Kavanagh, as always, we appreciate your expertise. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's bring in Lt Col Daniel Davis for more on the situation in the Middle East. He's a senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities. Good to have you with us. So far, Israel, we've seen this massive bombing campaign along with the full-on siege of Gaza. How do you assess the response so far? And do you think Israel's doing enough to minimize civilian casualties and adhere to international law?
Well, that's a big question, and a lot of people have different views on that. But so far, what it looks like is Israel is basically trying to prepare the battlefield, and they are going after whatever targets they can find with intelligence, where senior leaders are, especially, or where they find any buildup of Hamas fighters or capacity, like some of these rocket factories, et cetera. Those are some of the things they're doing right now. But what I hope they're doing behind the scenes is preparing their forces operationally for what they're going to do, doing rehearsals about what they're going to actually face when they get in there, and most importantly, doing intelligence preparation of the battlefield. And what that means is they need to try to say, all right, if this is going to be our operational plan, then we need to know what is in this part of Gaza City, or what is in this other route here. What can we face? Because if you don't have that stuff ready, if you're not really ready for what you're going to find on the ground, then when you do go in on the ground, you could have a huge casualties. You could walk in, blunder into traps set by the enemy, etc. We have some experience with this just recently when in Raqqa in 2017 and Mosul in 2016, when those big battles for those cities took place, it took months of preparations before the forces went in there. And I think that you're going to see some more delay from the Israeli Defense Forces. They don't want to rush to failure.
Ahead of this expected ground battle, we've been talking so much about the humanitarian corridors. Why has it been so tough for Secretary Blinken in the U.S. to get these humanitarian corridors open?
You know, there's actually problems on both sides of the line. On the Egyptian side, they don't want, a lot of Hamas fighters be infiltrating and coming into their country. They said, look, we've already got, upwards of 6 million refugees from all over the world and all over the region here. We don't want any more. They have a lot of heartburn with Hamas itself because of their relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood. And then on the Israeli side, they say, look, we got to be sure that all these trucks and everything coming in there have to be all inspected because they don't want any weapons or ammunition being smuggled inside. And so you have a big standoff between, the two sides coming in there. Meanwhile, you have all the people that are suffering. You have up to 600 Americans that are trying to get out.
Lieutenant Colonel, real quick, NBC News has learned from a defense official that 2,000 U.S. troops have been told to prepare to deploy to the region in support of Israel. Just very quickly, what would America's role be here?
Those are like what they call enablers, like the military trainers, they're experts, they're advisors, medical support staff, et cetera, people who can help you prepare your military. They're not trigger pullers, as we call them. They're not infantrymen, but they could support, anything in the future. And we'll see how that develops over time.
All right. Lieutenant Colonel Davis, thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us this morning. Everyday people living inside Gaza and Israel have been bravely sharing their stories as the war unfolds around them. NBC News Now anchor Kate Snow introduces us to some of those voices.
An American who moved to Israel with her husband.
There are not words to explain how it feels to open your social media and see your loved ones or your loved ones' friends, family, etc., being slaughtered, burned, raped, taken hostage into Gaza by the Hamas terrorists. I'm praying for a swift end to this conflict.
A young woman living in Gaza.
It's been a few days, but I'm already drained and this feels like eternity. Entire neighborhoods are being wiped out of existence, one neighborhood at a time. And right now, we're just waiting on our turn sooner or later.
A mother and her children in Tel Aviv under constant fear of attack.
I think that for the first time in my life, I cannot find words either in English or in Hebrew to explain the magnitudes of the feelings and emotions that I've gone through in the last week. I think that the hardest thing as a parent is to know exactly the extent of the atrocities that have happened, but to try to keep your kids out of this.
A doctor treating patients in Gaza.
I'm trying to deal with patients. We have maybe 10 times the capacity of the hospital, overloaded with patients, 10 times the beds. The people, patients are in the corridors, in the streets. They are evacuating them because there is no other beds. Any other casualties come to the hospital. I can't work in here.
A new mother in Israel worried about her son's future.
And I'm in Jerusalem with my parents. Our apartment in Tel Aviv does not have a bomb shelter, and I cannot watch a 15-day-old by myself. And I feel like I am not allowed to feel anything. I need to keep it together and stay calm for him and just help him eat and help him grow.
A student in Gaza trying to get her family to safety.
I've witnessed so many aggressions on Gaza, but yet have I ever seen anything this aggressive. This time I'm doubting that I make it out alive. All my friends have either lost their house, a family member. This time there's no safe place around. Yesterday we have to evacuate the whole building. I have to leave my room, my house, and my memories to go to a place that is no safer than my house. So we had to return back home because if I'm gonna die in my house.
And our thanks to Kate Snow for that report. Now, tensions are rising here in the U.S. Federal authorities have now opened a hate crime investigation into the fatal stabbing of this 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy. NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Gosk reports.
A mosque in Illinois filled with mourners for 6-year-old Wadea Al-Fayumi, a Palestinian-American boy stabbed along with his mother in their home, police say, just because they were Muslim. Hanan Shaheen survived. Her son did not. Wadea's father is in shock.
It's like a dream. I still didn't believe my son is gone.
The family's landlord, 71-year-old Joseph Zuba, is accused of first-degree murder and hate crimes and has not entered a plea.
This heinous crime did not take place in a vacuum. Over the past 10 days, Palestinians, Arabs, Muslim Americans have been subjected to a hateful, hostile campaign.
As the funeral was being held, the mosque was also on guard with heavy security because they fear their community could be targeted again.
People are afraid. I'm afraid to leave my house. I don't know if there's going to be some maniac who doesn't know any better.
The FBI says it is seeing an increase in rhetoric targeting both Muslim and Jewish people. Law enforcement has ramped up security at places of worship. Since Hamas terrorists attacked Israel, the Anti-Defamation League says there have been at least 91 anti-Semitic incidents nationwide, 7 assaults, 20 incidents of vandalism, and 64 of harassment. FBI Director Christopher Wray speaking out against hate crimes over the weekend.
The targeting of a community because of their faith is totally unacceptable.
The FBI also warns that terror organizations could use this time to stage attacks here in the U.S., saying the terror threat is ongoing and evolving. Back to you.
All right, Stephanie Gosk, thank you. New this morning, police have shot and killed the man suspected in a terror attack in Belgium. After a night-long manhunt, police found the man in Brussels. He's accused of killing 2 Swedish soccer fans yesterday and injuring a 3rd person. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now with the latest on this. Keir, good morning. So first of all, what can you tell us about this shooting overnight and the manhunt? How were police able to find this suspect?
Well, Belgium's Justice Minister has just provided the shooter's first name, Abdel Salam, and an initial for his second name, say L, saying he's a 45-year-old Tunisian man. A man in question did appear to turn up in a social media video. It's not confirmed whether that really was him, but of course he was. The actual video of the attack was shared on social media, as so often with these things now, and this was the case in Brussels last night. It was filmed and put on social media, so they had an idea of what he was wearing, what he looked like. So they managed to get him in a short period of time, and I think there is deep relief about that.
Keir, so what are we learning more about the shooter? Anything about a potential motive at all?
No, we don't. I think it's too early for that. But I will say this, you know, European diplomats I've spoken with in recent days have feared that events in Israel would spark violence in Europe. It's not clear this morning whether that's what this is, whether this attack is connected to those events in Israel. But, you know, there are other aspects to this. There are 2 Swedish soccer fans who were killed. And back in September, there was a riot in Sweden over a burning of a Quran. So could that be connected? It's also being said by Belgian officials that the man declared himself as affiliated to ISIS. Is there a connection there? Are there other accomplices on the run? All of these aspects of this investigation still to be played out.
And Keir, I mean, Brussels does have a history of deadly terrorist attacks. What more can you tell us about that?
It does. Back in 2016, people will remember because it was dramatic, made a lot of headlines. Back in 2016, a double suicide bombing at Brussels airport left more than 30 people dead. And I remember that was a terrorist cell that had already carried out a killing spree in France the previous year. So there are recent and very painful memories in this part of Europe over this kind of extremist militant attack. And I have to tell you, one European diplomat I spoke to expressed that kind of fear that there may be a tinderbox scenario here, saying we don't want to import the crisis from Israel. We have seen Europe struggle to come up with a united response to what's happening in Israel. Finally, all 27 countries in Europe issuing a statement on Sunday night. But this kind of violence is one of the aspects that some European leaders, at least, have been very worried about.
All right. Keir Simmons, Keir, thanks for your reporting. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.